The night sky burned with fire. Ships roared above the trees, their engines shaking the ground like a storm. The forest had always been quiet, filled only with the sounds of insects and the soft rush of the river. Now it was a battlefield. Smoke curled between the trees and the smell of burning metal mixed with crushed leaves. A young human soldier named Kale crouched low, clutching his rifle, his heart hammering against his ribs. He had been separated from his unit, lost in the chaos when the alien fleet descended without warning. Kale had seen wars before, but nothing like this. These enemies did not fight like humans. They came from the skies with wings of fire and scales of steel. Their weapons were alive, pulsing with strange light, cutting through human defenses like paper. Every explosion told him the truth. Humanity was losing. But even in war, the forest whispered secrets. While Kale tried to move toward the river, he heard a sound that froze him in place. It wasn't the crash of ships or the screams of soldiers. It was soft, trembling, almost like a cry. He tightened his grip on the rifle and followed it, pushing aside branches, stepping carefully through mud and broken roots. There, beneath a tree scorched black by plasma fire, he found it. A small creature, curled up, glowing faintly as though fire lived under its skin. Its eyes were wide and golden, filled with fear. The tiny wings on its back twitched weakly, glowing in rhythm with its heartbeat. Kale's breath caught. It was a hatchling. The stories of dragons, told to scare children, flashed through his mind. Creatures said to tear apart armies, burn cities, to the ground. And here was one, no bigger than a puppy, trembling, helpless. He knew what his commanders would order. Kill it before it grew. But something inside him refused. This wasn't a monster. It was just a child, left alone in the middle of fire and war. The hatchling let out a faint sound, almost a whimper, and lifted its head to look at him. In that moment, Kale felt the fear in its small body. Not the rage of a beast, but the desperation of something abandoned. He lowered his rifle slowly, letting the barrel fall toward the dirt. He reached out with his free hand, careful, slow, as though he were approaching a wounded bird. The hatchling didn't run. Instead, it leaned into his hand, its scales warm against his skin, its small chest rising and falling quickly. Kyle swallowed, hard, realizing what he was doing. He was standing in the middle of a war zone holding the child of his enemy. Then the ground shook again. The roar that followed was unlike anything he had ever heard. It was deeper than thunder, older than storms. Trees bent with the force of it, and even the flames seemed to flicker as if afraid. Kale looked up and his heart almost stopped. A shadow crossed the sky, wings stretching wider than houses, glowing veins of fire running along their edges. The air itself seemed to burn as the great shape descended. Its eyes glowed like suns, and its scales shimmered with the fury of a storm. The dragon had returned. The hatchling in Kale's arms stirred, letting out a small chirp that seemed to echo through the forest. The massive dragon's gaze locked on him, and in that gaze, Kyle understood what he faced. This was no ordinary enemy. This was a mother searching for her child, and he, a human soldier, was holding it. He didn't move. His legs screamed to run, his mind begged him to drop the creature and escape, but his heart told him something else. If he let go now, the hatchling would die. If he stayed, he might die. But in that fragile moment, Kale chose to stand still, holding the little life that had trusted him. The dragon roared again, shaking the earth, fire lighting up the night. And Kale whispered to himself, almost too quietly to hear, "What have I done?" The forest shook as the dragon descended, its wings throwing storms of wind through the trees. Leaves tore from branches, flames bent backward, and the ground quaked with each beat of its wings. Kyle felt the force push against his chest, yet he did not loosen his grip on the hatchling. The tiny creature pressed closer to him, its warm glow rising brighter, almost as if it was answering the mother's call. The dragon landed with a crash that split the earth. Its claws dug trenches into the soil, its body towering higher than any war machine Cale had ever seen. Scales shimmered with fire, every line of its body pulsing with life and rage. Its eyes, molten gold, burned down on him. Cale felt so small, so fragile, holding the very child it had returned for. He raised a hand slowly, trying not to look like a threat. His rifle lay on the ground behind him, abandoned. For a soldier, it was madness. For a human, it was instinct. He knew weapons meant nothing here. The only chance he had was to show he wasn't the enemy. The hatchling chirped again, louder this time. Its small wings flapped, glowing brighter as it stretched toward the massive figure. The mother's gaze shifted, and for one heartbeat Cale thought he saw hesitation in her eyes. She had come ready to kill anything that touched her child. But now she saw a human holding it gently, not as prey, not as a trophy, but as if it mattered. A roar split the air, not from her, but from above, Cale turned his head in time to see the alien ships break through the smoke, their weapons glowing red. They weren't after him. They were after her, the Dragon Mother. Humanity had fled, but these new invaders, these scaled conquerors, were relentless. The first blast streaked through the sky, striking the ground near her feet. Dirt and fire exploded upward. The hatchling squealed, trembling in Cale's arms. The mother's head snapped toward the ships, her fury unleashed in a sound that tore through the forest. She opened her mouth, and fire brighter than the sun erupted upward, striking the nearest vessel. The ship burned like paper, folding in flames before crashing into the trees. Cale fell to his knees, shielding the hatchling as debris rained down. His heart thundered in his chest. He should have run, should have left, but he couldn't. The hatchling clung to him as though he were its protector, not its captor. For reasons he couldn't explain, Cale felt the same. The dragon fought like a storm given flesh. Fire roared from her lungs, wings split the air, and every strike of her tail broke the ground. But more ships came, surrounding her, filling the forest with light and destruction. Even a creature of her size couldn't hold forever. Cale could see the wounds already bleeding across her scales, glowing red where plasma strikes had landed. He knew one truth then. She wasn't going to last. Not alone, not against a fleet built to burn worlds. And he knew something else too. If she fell, the hatchling would die with her. His mind raced. He was just one human soldier, lost, forgotten by his own side. Yet in this chaos he held the one thing that mattered to the most powerful creature he had ever seen. He felt her gaze return to him, her massive eyes locking with his. There was fire in them, yes, but also a strange recognition. Almost like she could see inside him, past the fear to the choice he had already made. Cale stood again, gripping the hatchling close. His voice was steady, though his heart pounded. "I'll help you," he whispered. The words were small compared to the roar of battle, but somehow the dragon seemed to hear. She lowered her head, bringing her molten gaze down to his level. For a moment, human and alien, soldier and beast, mother and protector all stood together. Then another strike crashed into the ground, shaking the earth apart. Cale knew time was gone. The war had found him again. Only now he was no longer fighting for orders or survival. He was fighting for something greater, and with the hatchling glowing brighter in his arms, he stepped into the fire. The firestorm tore across the forest as more alien ships descended, their weapons burning through trees and stone alike. Cale ran forward with the hatchling clutched tight against his chest, his boots sinking into mud and ash. Behind him, the Dragon Mother roared, her wings spreading wide, casting the battlefield into shadow. She rose into the air with a single beat, flames trailing from her jaws as she launched herself at the attackers. The hatchling stirred in his arms, its small, claws gripping his jacket, gave a faint chirp that felt like both fear and hope. Cale looked at the glowing creature and knew he had to survive. For it, and maybe even for her, the giant beast tearing through the sky. A blast struck the ground nearby, throwing Cale off his feet. He hit the earth hard, dirt flying into his face. The hatchling squealed, but he rolled over quickly, wrapping both arms around it to shield its tiny body. His chest burned from the impact, but when he opened his eyes, the creature was safe. Relief flooded him like water in a desert. Above, the dragon mother fought with all her fury. Her body twisted through the air, fire cutting across the sky, tail smashing through ships that dared fly too close. She was magnificent, unstoppable, yet bleeding. Every time a plasma bolt slammed into her scales, Kyle flinched as though the pain were his own. He knew she could not hold forever. Soldiers, alien, infantry poured into the forest. They were tall, armored in black plates that reflected the firelight. Their weapons crackled with red energy, long spears that spat bolts of lightning. Kyle saw them moving through the smoke, spreading out to encircle the dragon. He ducked behind, a fallen log clutching the hatchling close, trying to think. He was one man against too many, but something inside him refused to stay hidden. He remembered the dragon's eyes, that look she had given him when she saw the hatchling in his arms. It wasn't only rage, it was trust, fragile and dangerous. He had promised to help her, and promises meant something even in war. Kale crawled along the ground until he spotted the body of a fallen soldier, human. The man's rifle was still, clutched in his hands. Kale pried it loose, checked the power cell, and let out a shaky breath when he saw it was full. His training whispered in his mind, clear and sharp. Stay low, pick your targets, move fast. The first alien infantryman came close, its armor glowing faintly in the firelight. Kale rose just enough, aimed, and fired. The bolt struck the alien's chest, punching through its armor and sending it crashing back. The hatchling chirped in alarm, but Kale pressed it close with one arm and kept shooting. The forest lit up with bursts of energy, shadows jerking with each strike. For every alien that fell, 2 more appeared. Yet Kale didn't stop. He moved, through the smoke like a ghost, using trees for cover, striking quick, then vanishing. He wasn't just fighting to survive anymore. He was fighting to give the dragon mother a chance. High above, she noticed. Between roars and fire, her eyes found him again. A tiny human, standing against an army, holding her child and refusing to fall. Something ancient stirred in her gaze, something that had nothing to do with war. She let out a sound, not a roar, but a deep, vibrating call that shook Kale's bones. The hatchling answered with a cry of its own, glowing even brighter. Then, in the middle of fire and destruction, Kale understood. This wasn't just a battle. It was a bond forming between them, fragile, impossible, but real. The aliens pressed harder. Plasma fire rained down. The ground split open with blasts, and Kale ducked behind another tree, panting, his rifle almost overheated. He looked down at the hatchling, which stared back at him with wide golden eyes. Somehow, its fear gave him strength. "All right, little one," he muttered, teeth clenched. "If we're doing this, we do it together." He stood again, fire and smoke swirling around him, the dragon mother diving above, the alien army closing in. The war raged on all sides, but Kale no longer cared about orders or about which side claimed victory. His only mission now was clear: protect the hatchling, stand with the dragon, and somehow survive the night. The forest was no longer a place of silence. It had become a storm of fire, screams, and roars. The sky glowed with burning ships as the dragon mother fought like a living inferno. And on the ground, Kale moved like a shadow, protecting the hatchling pressed against his chest. He fired when he had to, hid when he needed to, and kept running, because stopping meant death. But even through the chaos, Kale began to notice something strange. The hatchling wasn't just watching him, it was responding. Its glow pulsed brighter each time Kale pulled the trigger, and when he whispered to calm it, the little creature's light softened, steady like a heartbeat. It was almost as if the tiny dragon was linked to him, feeding off his courage. The dragon mother roared above, her great body circling lower, and Kale understood something even stranger. She was fighting for him too. More than once, when alien infantry pushed too close, her tail swept down through the trees, crushing their ranks. Once a blast of fire scorched the ground only feet away from Kyle, but the flames bent wide, leaving him untouched. She could have burned him without effort, yet every strike spared him. The aliens, realizing the bond, changed their tactics. Instead of only attacking the mother, they began targeting Kale. He heard the shouts of their commanders, saw their spears glowing as they turned toward him. To them, he was no longer just a lost soldier. He was the weakness of the beast, the human holding what she valued most. Kale cursed under his breath as bolts ripped through the forest around him. He ducked behind a rock, clutching the hatchling close. His rifle hummed hot in his hands, its power cell nearly drained. He couldn't hold out forever. He glanced up at the dragon mother soaring overhead, bleeding but still fighting, and his chest tightened. She wouldn't last much longer either. For one sharp second, Kale considered running. If he left the hatchling, maybe the aliens would ignore him. He could vanish into the smoke, hide until the war moved on, but the thought burned him. He looked down at the glowing little creature, trembling, but trusting him completely. Its golden eyes stared up, and Kyle felt something deep, something that cut through fear. He wasn't going to run. Not now. Not ever. He stood again and opened fire, his shots tearing through the armored soldiers pressing closer. Each time one fell, another advanced, but Kale refused to back down. He moved like a man possessed, his determination stronger than the fire, raining from the sky. Then came a moment he would never forget. The dragon mother dove low, her wings sweeping the flames aside, and landed only a few yards from him. Her massive head lowered until her eyes met his. In those molten depths, Kale saw not just fury but recognition, she knew. She saw him not as prey or thief but as protector. The hatchling chirped in his arms, reaching its tiny claws toward her. The mother let out a sound low and resonant that shook the ground but was not a roar of rage. It was something else. An acknowledgement. Before Kale could even process it, the aliens surged again, their weapons raised. The dragon mother swung her head, unleashing fire that wiped out half their line. Kale raised his rifle, covering the rest. For the first time, they weren't fighting apart. They were fighting together. The forest became a nightmare for the invaders. Where Kale's sharp shots cut down infantry, the dragon's fire tore through ships and machines. The ground trembled under her claws and the air burned with her fury, and everywhere Kale moved she followed close, shielding him, protecting not just her child but him as well. The aliens began to falter. Their ranks broke under the combined fury of human and dragon. Yet even in their retreat, Kale knew this was only the beginning. Their fleet above still glowed with countless ships waiting to descend. But in that moment, standing shoulder to shoulder with a creature born of fire, Kale felt something he hadn't since the war began. Hope. The smoke thinned for a moment, giving Kale his first clear look at the battlefield. The once lush forest was now a wasteland. Trees lay split like broken spears, the earth scarred by fire, and the sky glowed with falling debris. Above, alien ships circled like vultures waiting for the final strike. Kyle's chest heaved as he leaned against a shattered tree. The hatchling clung to his jacket, still glowing faintly, its little body trembling from exhaustion. He stroked its head gently, whispering words he barely understood himself. "You're safe, I've got you." The dragon mother lowered herself beside him, her wings folding close, her body heaving with each breath. Smoke curled from her nostrils, and her scales glowed red from fresh wounds. She was still powerful, still terrifying. But Kale could see, her strength fading. He knew they couldn't stay here. The aliens weren't retreating, they were regrouping. Their fleet was vast, and they hadn't brought their full power yet. They wanted something. Not just destruction. Not just war. Their focus on the hatchling told him the truth. The child wasn't a random target. It was the reason they were here. Kale crouched close to the mother, uncertain if she understood words, but feeling the need to speak anyway. "They're not going to stop. They want your child. They'll burn this whole world to get it." The dragon's eyes shifted toward him, glowing with something he couldn't name. Rage, fear, understanding. She lowered her head, close enough that he could see every scar carved into her scales. For a moment, Kyle felt as if she was reading him, measuring his resolve. The hatchling chirped softly, wriggling in his arms. It stretched toward its mother, but didn't leap away from him. Instead, it pressed itself against Cale's chest, as though torn between two worlds. The bond was real, stronger now than before, and Cale felt the weight of it settle in his heart. A sudden shriek split the air. Alien infantry poured in again, this time supported by machines that crawled through the smoke. Tall, spider-like constructs with glowing weapons mounted on their backs. They moved with mechanical precision, cutting through the ruins. Kyle gritted his teeth. He could fight soldiers. He couldn't fight machines like those. The dragon mother rose again, her body trembling but her roar still shaking the earth. She launched herself forward, fire spewing across the metal beasts. Two fell in flames, their armor melting under her fury. But more followed, their weapons glowing hotter. Bolts struck her side, tearing chunks of scale and flesh. She staggered, catching herself with one massive wing. Cale's pulse thundered. He couldn't just stand here. He looked around desperately, searching for any advantage. His eyes fell on a collapsed transport ship, its engines still glowing faintly. If he could reach it, maybe he could overload the reactor, turn it into an explosion big enough to clear the enemy. But that meant getting close. Through soldiers, through fire, through chaos. He looked down at the hatchling, then at the dragon, mother. His mind screamed it was suicide. His heart whispered it was the only way. He pressed his forehead briefly to the hatchling's warm head. Stay with me. Just a little longer. He sprinted, dodging fire, weaving between broken trees and fallen steel. Plasma bolts scorched the ground at his heels. He threw himself into the wreckage, coughing as smoke burned his throat. Inside, sparks rained down and the reactor hummed with unstable energy. His hands shook as he pulled open the control panel, his soldiers' training guiding him. He bypassed wires, rerouted power, forcing the unstable core into overload. Lights blazed, red alarms screamed, and the hum rose into a dangerous whine. Come on, he muttered, sweat dripping down his face. Just a few seconds more. Outside, the dragon mother was surrounded, fire colliding with endless weapons. The hatchling cried out, its glow surging, almost blinding in Cale's arms. And in that desperate instant, Cale pulled the final wire. The reactor's light turned white. He had only heartbeats to run. The light from the reactor swelled to blinding brilliance. Cale sprinted from the wreckage, clutching the hatchling tight against his chest. He didn't look back, he didn't need to. The high-pitched whine reached its peak, and then the world tore apart. A white-hot explosion swallowed the battlefield. The shockwave hurled Cale forward, slamming him into the dirt. Fire rolled through the forest, trees snapping like twigs, alien soldiers vaporized where they stood. Even the great war machines buckled, their black armor melting under the blast. Cale coughed hard, ears ringing, vision blurred. His arms ached. But when he looked down, the hatchling was still in his grasp, glowing brighter than ever, as if the explosion had awakened something deep inside it. Through the smoke, he saw the dragon mother. The blast had thrown her down, her massive body skidding across scorched ground. But she rose again, scales cracked and bleeding, her wings trembling. She stared at Cale, not with fury, not even with suspicion, but with something closer to awe. She had seen him run into danger not for himself, but for her child. And now, for the first time, she lowered her head fully, bowing so low her molten eyes met his at ground level. Cale swallowed, his heart pounding. The forest was quiet except for distant fire. Most of the aliens in the immediate area had been destroyed. For the moment, they had won. But Cale knew the silence wouldn't last. The fleet above was still there, more would come. And when they realized their infantry had failed, they would unleash something far worse. He pushed himself to his feet, wincing at the pain in his ribs. "We can't stay here," he whispered to the hatchling, then looked up at the mother. "You know that too, don't you?" The dragon mother gave a low rumble, almost like a growl of agreement. Her great wings stretched, though Cale could see how badly she hurt. She couldn't fly far, not with those wounds. Cale scanned the ruins and spotted something beyond the smoke, a cave mouth in the cliffs half hidden by broken trees. Shelter. a place to regroup. He motioned toward it, though he knew words meant little. There, we can hide. To his surprise, the dragon mother shifted her massive body toward the direction he pointed. She understood. He staggered forward, leading the way through the broken forest. Every step burned, but he didn't stop. The hatchling clung to him, its glow steady as if guiding the path. Behind him, the dragon mother limped, her claws dragging trenches through the ash. At last, they reached the cave. The air inside was cool and dark, a relief from the burning world outside. Kyle collapsed near the entrance, his back against the stone wall, chest heaving. The hatchling curled in his lap, finally resting, its tiny breath soft and steady. The dragon mother lowered herself nearby, filling the cave with her sheer size. Her golden eyes glowed faintly in the shadows, watching him. Kyle felt the weight of that gaze but didn't turn away. He had no armor left, no strength to fake courage. What she saw was all he had, a human soldier who refused to abandon her child. Minutes passed in silence, broken only by their breathing and the distant hum of ships above. Kale's thoughts spun. Why did the aliens want the hatchling so badly? Why risk fleets and armies for one child? He looked down at the little creature in his lap, glowing softly like a star, and wondered what secret it carried. The hatchling stirred in its sleep, and for a heartbeat Kyle thought he saw its glow spread through the cave walls, faint patterns shimmering like ancient runes before fading. His skin prickled. This was no ordinary creature. He looked back at the mother. They'll come again, stronger. They know your child is special. The dragon's rumble was deep, shaking the stones. Kyle didn't need words to understand. She already knew. But then she did something that sent chills down his spine. She shifted her wounded wing aside, making space, and gently nudged her child closer into Kyle's arms. It wasn't just trust. It was acceptance. And in that moment, Kyle realized his life had changed forever. The cave walls pulsed faintly in the darkness as though responding to the hatchling's glow. Kyle sat still, his back pressed against cold stone, his rifle resting beside him. The child curled in his lap radiated warmth, its tiny breaths steady, now no longer filled with fear. Every rise and fall of its chest seemed to calm the storm inside him. But Kyle's mind refused to rest. He had seen too much in one night. Armies burned, machines shattered, and a dragon mother who fought the skies for her child. Yet none of that unsettled him as much as the question burning in his thoughts. Why? Why would the aliens risk so much? Spend ships and soldiers for a single hatchling? The answer came in fragments. The way the child's glow had flared during the explosion. The shimmering runes that had danced across the cave walls when it shifted in sleep. Power. Not just the strength of a future dragon, but something deeper, older. A secret the invaders knew and feared. The dragon mother stirred, her massive form shifting against the stone floor. She winced, her wounds still raw. Kyle wanted to help, but what could a human soldier do for a creature of fire and scales? Still, he tore a strip from his jacket, soaking it with water from his canteen and laid it against one of the bleeding gashes near her leg. She rumbled low, her golden eyes narrowing but didn't pull away. "You're welcome," he muttered, half smiling despite his exhaustion. The hatchling chirped softly, wriggling in his lap before stretching its small wings. Golden light spilled from them, brighter this time, washing across the cave. Kale gasped as the glow touched the mother's wounds. Before his eyes the bleeding slowed, the torn scales tightened, the flesh beneath knitting together. Not completely, but enough that the pain faded from her growls. Kale looked down at the hatchling, stunned. "You can heal her, can't you?" The child chirped again as if answering yes. Its glow dimmed afterward, leaving it drowsy, curling back into his arms. Kale felt a chill crawl up his spine. This wasn't just a dragon. It was something far rarer, a key, a weapon, maybe even a hope that could turn wars. And now he understood why the invaders would burn worlds to capture it. The mother's eyes met his again, steady, unblinking. Cale didn't need words to know what she was asking. She wanted him to keep protecting her child, even against what was coming. His chest tightened under that gaze. He was a soldier trained to follow orders, yet no order had ever felt heavier than this silent vow. Outside, thunder rolled, not from the sky, but from engines. Cale stiffened, moving to the cave's edge. Through cracks in the rocks, he saw lights glowing red in the smoke above the forest. Alien transports, dozens of them. The enemy had regrouped, and they were moving with precision. They knew exactly where to strike. Cale turned back quickly. "They've found us," the mother growled low, smoke curling from her nostrils. She tried to rise, but her injuries held her down. Even healed slightly, she was too weak to fight an army alone. Cale's mind raced. He had his rifle, a few power cells, and the cave itself. He scanned the walls, the ceiling, the narrow entrance. A thought formed. Dangerous, desperate, but maybe their only chance. We can't fight them head on, but maybe we can hold them here. The mother tilted her head as though reading his intent. Cale knelt beside the hatchling, pressing his forehead lightly against its glowing head. "Little one, whatever you are, you're worth more than any army. I won't let them take you." Imaui, cave trembled as the first transport touched down outside. The screech of metal echoed, followed by the heavy steps of soldiers. Shadows moved through the smoke, marching closer. Kyle tightened his grip on his rifle, his heart steady now. He had been lost when the war began. Just another soldier in the chaos. But here, in the dark with a hatchling in his arms and a dragon at his side, he had found something worth fighting for. The footsteps drew closer. The glow of alien weapons lit the cave mouth, and Cale whispered, "Then let them come." The cave mouth glowed red as enemy lights drew closer. Shadows stretched long across the stone floor, and the sound of marching boots echoed like a drumbeat of doom. Kyle steadied his rifle, his back pressed against the rock. The hatchling shifted in his arms, glowing faintly, as if sensing the danger outside. The dragon mother crouched low behind him. She couldn't fit deeper into the cave, but her massive frame blocked half the entrance. Her golden eyes burned with fury, though her weakened body betrayed her. Smoke curled from her nostrils, each breath heavy. She was ready to fight, but Cale knew she wouldn't last if they stormed in numbers. The first alien soldier appeared at the cave mouth, armor glinting crimson under the firelight. Kyle fired without hesitation. The shot tore through its chest, dropping it instantly. More figures surged forward. Kyle fired again and again, each shot echoing through the cavern, sparks bursting as energy clashed against stone. The hatchling chirped suddenly, its glow pulsing brighter. The light spilled across the cave walls, forming faint patterns like shifting runes etched by unseen hands. The aliens froze for a second, unsettled. Kyle felt the air thrum with power. His skin prickled, as if he were standing inside a storm. Then the hatchling shrieked. It was a high, piercing cry that echoed through the stone like a bell. The runes flared brighter, and the cave itself seemed to respond. The ground shook, and rocks tumbled from the ceiling, crushing two soldiers at the entrance. Kyle's eyes widened. The hatchling wasn't just glowing, it was controlling the cave. The mother roared, seizing the chance. Fire exploded from her jaws, sweeping across the entrance and consuming the invaders. Screams echoed outside as soldiers scrambled back. But more followed, relentless, forcing their way into the cave. Kyle dropped to one knee, firing into the advancing line. Each shot was careful, trained. His body ached, his arms burned, but he didn't falter. The hatchling pressed against his chest, glowing brighter with every heartbeat, until it felt like he was holding a small sun. Then it happened. A blast of energy from one of the alien weapons struck Cale's shoulder, spinning him to the ground. Pain exploded through him, and his rifle clattered across the stone. He gasped, teeth clenched, struggling to move. The hatchling squealed, wriggling free from his grasp. "No!" Kyle reached out weakly, but the child darted forward, wings flaring wide. Its glow erupted into brilliance, flooding the cave with golden fire. Soldiers raised their weapons, but before they could strike, the hatchling screamed again. The runes across the walls flared, brighter than ever, and the cave answered. Spikes of stone erupted from the ground, tearing through the invaders. Walls shifted, sealing parts of the entrance, crushing those caught in between. The air hummed with ancient power, and the soldiers who remained stumbled back in fear. Cale stared, half blinded by the light. His chest rose and fell rapidly, blood seeping from his shoulder, but even through the pain he understood. This child wasn't just a dragon's offspring. It was tied to something older, something deep in the world itself. A power the aliens wanted, a power they feared. The mother lowered her head beside the hatchling, her great body shielding it as the glow dimmed. She let out a deep rumble, almost soothing, as though calming her child after unleashing its gift. The soldiers outside hesitated now, their line broken, their confidence shaken. Cale forced himself back to his knees, gripping his rifle again. His vision swam, but his resolve only hardened. "You'll have to kill me before you touch it," he muttered under his breath. The dragon mother's gaze flicked toward him. For the first time, Cale thought he saw respect in her molten eyes, not just for saving her child, but for standing even when broken. Outside, the alien commander shouted orders. More troops were gathering. The siege wasn't over, but Cale no longer felt like a lone soldier. He was part of something larger now, something ancient and powerful, and together, human, hatchling, and mother would fight. The cave trembled with every blast from outside. Alien weapons hammered against the stone walls, shaking dust loose from the ceiling. Sparks lit the entrance as soldiers tried to cut their way through with plasma fire. The siege was tightening. Cale pressed his back against the wall, blood seeping from his wounded shoulder. His rifle hummed weakly in his grip, its power cell nearly empty. He stole a glance at the hatchling, resting now after unleashing its strange power. Its glow had dimmed, but its tiny chest rose and fell steadily. The little one was alive, though drained. The mother dragon loomed beside them, her breathing heavy, her body trembling from wounds and exhaustion. Even so, she stood between them and the enemy, her golden eyes fixed on the entrance. Cale realized she was barely holding herself upright, yet her will to protect her child was unbroken. "They're not stopping," Cale muttered under his breath. He could hear alien commanders shouting, their troops reorganizing for another push. "If we stay here, they'll bury us alive." The dragon mother rumbled low as if agreeing. Her gaze shifted to Cale, then to the tunnel behind them that led deeper into the cave. For a moment he thought she wanted to retreat further inside, but then he understood. She wasn't planning to hide. She was planning to break out. Cale clenched his jaw. It was madness. Outside waited an army and a fleet, but staying here meant certain death. If there was even the smallest chance to escape, it was worth trying. He checked the hatchling again, stroking its head softly. Its golden eyes flickered open, meeting his. Despite its weakness, it gave a faint chirp, as if it knew what was coming. Cale forced a smile. "Stay strong, little one, we're not done yet." The next assault came suddenly. Explosions rocked the cave entrance, tearing chunks of stone free. Alien soldiers surged in, weapons blazing. Cale fired back, his shots cutting down two before his rifle sputtered dry. He cursed, tossing it aside, and grabbed a fallen alien spear. The weapon hummed with red energy, heavy but deadly. The mother roared, her fire sweeping the entrance, forcing soldiers back. She lunged forward, her claws tearing into the earth, smashing the rocks apart. With one mighty push, she widened the cave mouth into rubble, sending stone crashing outward. Light and smoke burst in, revealing the battlefield beyond. Cale blinked, against the brightness. Outside lay a nightmare. Rows of soldiers, machines crawling across the ground, and ships hovering low with weapons glowing. The air stank of smoke and scorched metal. The dragon spread her wings, blood dripping from her scales, and let out a roar that split the sky. For one heartbeat, even the alien army faltered. Cale sprinted beside her, the hatchling clutched against his chest, the stolen spear humming in his hand. His legs screamed with pain, but he didn't stop. They broke into the open, mother and human side by side, facing an army that seemed endless. The aliens recovered quickly. Orders were shouted, weapons raised, fire streaking toward them. The dragon swung her wings wide, shielding Kale, the bolt striking her scales with blinding bursts. She staggered but did not fall. Kale thrust the alien spear forward, cutting down a soldier who charged too close. He moved with raw determination, every strike fueled not by orders but by the promise he had made, to protect the child in his arms. The hatchling stirred again, its glow faint but steady. Kyle felt warmth spread through his chest, stronger than pain, stronger than fear. He realized the bond between them wasn't just emotional. Somehow the little one's power was flowing into him, giving him strength he shouldn't have had left. Together they pushed forward, the dragon crushing soldiers, under her claws Kale striking through the smoke. For the first time the enemy line wavered. They hadn't expected this, the fire of a mother, the fury of a human, and the strange power of a child. But above, the sky darkened. More ships descended, massive vessels bristling with weapons. Kale's stomach sank as their shadows fell across the battlefield. This wasn't over. It was only escalating. He glanced up at the mother dragon, who bled from a dozen wounds yet still stood tall. She met his eyes, and in that silent moment Kale understood. The final battle was coming, and they would face it together. The battlefield burned like a second sun. Smoke rolled across shattered trees, fire licked at broken machines, and the sky thundered with engines as the massive alien warships descended. Kyle stood at the dragon mother's side, the hatchling pressed against his chest, his body bruised, blood soaking through his torn jacket. Yet his grip did not falter. The alien army regrouped quickly, surrounding them in a tightening circle. Soldiers advanced with their glowing spears. Machines crawled forward on spidery legs, and the great ships above hummed as their weapons prepared to fire. It was overwhelming. Too many, too powerful. Kale's chest tightened. He couldn't fight them all. Neither could she. But the hatchling stirred. Its golden eyes opened wide, and its glow spread brighter than ever before. Kale felt the warmth pulse through him, filling every corner of his body, chasing away the ache, steadying his breath. The dragon mother turned her massive head toward her child, and for the first time Kale saw fear in her gaze. Not fear of the enemy, but fear of what the hatchling was about to unleash. The air shifted. The runes Kale had seen in the cave now shimmered across the battlefield itself, glowing faintly in the smoke. Soldiers stopped mid-step, weapons lowering as they stared in confusion. The ground rumbled, deep and powerful, as if the world itself was waking. The hatchling let out a cry, not small and frightened, but loud, clear, commanding. Light exploded outward, flooding the battlefield. Kyle shielded his eyes, but the warmth didn't burn. It flowed through him like fire and water, filling him with strength beyond reason. The alien army faltered as the light reached them. There, weapons sputtered, machines froze, ships above staggered in midair, their engines failing. Kale watched in stunned silence as entire vessels dropped from the sky, slamming into the ground in balls of fire. Soldiers screamed, some dropping their spears, others fleeing into the smoke. The hatchling's glow spread further, rising into the heavens. For a moment, the night sky itself seemed to tear open, revealing stars brighter than Kale had ever seen. The light pulsed once more, and the battlefield fell silent. When the glow faded, Kale found himself on his knees, the hatchling still in his arms, its body now limp with exhaustion. The mother crouched close, nudging her child gently, her golden eyes full of worry. The little one chirped faintly, alive but drained, curling back against Kyle's chest as if it had chosen him once again. The battlefield lay in ruins. The alien army was broken, their fleet shattered, their survivors scattered into the night. The impossible had happened, not by human weapons, not by dragon fire, but by the child Kale had sworn to protect. He looked up at the mother, her great head lowering until her molten eyes filled his vision. She could kill him easily now, reclaim her child and vanish into the skies, but she didn't. Instead, she pressed her nose gently against him, her breath warm, her scales glowing faintly. It wasn't just gratitude. It was something deeper. Acceptance. Kyle swallowed hard, a lump forming in his throat. He wasn't just a soldier anymore, he was something else, protector, ally, maybe even part of their bond. The war that had started as chaos had brought him to this moment, standing beside a creature of legend, holding a child that carried the power of worlds. The night sky was quiet now, the flames dying into embers. Kale finally lowered himself onto the ground, exhausted beyond measure. The hatchling nestled into his arms, its tiny breaths soft and steady. The dragon mother curled around them both, her massive body forming a shield against the dark. For the first time since the war began, Kyle felt peace, not because the battle was won, but because he had found something worth more than survival. Family. And in that silence, under the stars, Kale closed his eyes, knowing his life had changed forever.